So, good afternoon, caregivers and Joe. We're coming to you with our very first video chat. This is actually the first video chat I've ever done. So we miss you guys, and we thought this might be a way to communicate with you. We are in uncharted territory these days with this pandemic and the challenges that we have been faced with. Many respects just unbelievable, and it is just something that we are dealing with really on a daily basis here. Each of you and myself and the office are trying to do life differently these days, and if any of you are like me, you just don't like it. So we felt it necessary, though, to take a minute and talk to you a little bit about some COVID issues. But before we do that, I just want to pause a moment and just thank you guys for everything that you've been doing. From everybody in the office, we are deeply thankful for the work that you've been putting in, especially during the period of March and April when we didn't really know what was going on. So thank you. So let's talk COVID a minute. First of all, we care deeply for your safety and the safety of our clients. We take it as a very high priority. Secondly, we want you to know that we will not operate out of fear, but that we will pray diligently as we go forward, knowing who is ultimately in control. Thirdly, we want you to know that we discuss issues related to COVID on a daily basis in this office. We follow and keep in touch with the CDC guidelines. We have our National Home Care Association recommendations that we follow. We have watched multiple webinars from experts dealing with the issue of COVID. What we're not going to do is follow the MLB protocols. So now we recognize that everybody has a different degree of comfort regarding COVID in this pandemic. Some of you are on a very casual side of COVID, and others are very fearful of COVID, and many are anywhere in between that spectrum. And so we know that, and we just want you to know that we understand that everybody looks at it differently. The other thing that we recognize is that the guidelines and information that we watch and follow are changing continually, weekly in many cases. So given all of this, we want you guys to know that we are doing the best that we can, given the information that we have in handling this COVID situation, the pandemic. And so we want you to know that, but we also want you to realize that we understand and know that we are not going to meet each and every one of your personal expectations. It's just something that running a business we really can't do. So let's talk a little more specifically about COVID. First of all, PPE, personal protective equipment, the availability of it and the supply of it. We are building up a mask supply. So masks, we're talking about the cloth masks. We have some KN95 masks and surgical masks. We are accumulating a supply of face shields, which will protect the eyes in certain situations that we feel we need to distribute them. We have glove supply, of course, as well. But what we want you to know is that PPE equipment is very difficult to come by yet, and it's very expensive due to the supply and demand. So we're going to ask you to be very responsible in your use of the equipment and your cleaning of the equipment, and just please just take responsibility for it. So moving on, the next item is something that is really a reminder for you. It is our expectations for your safety and client safety. And the first item of that we want to remind you of is that we expect all caregivers to wear reusable cloth face masks at all times while with a client, and that includes masks before entering the home. 15 minutes before we started to record this webinar, Governor Evers issued a statewide mandate for wearing the mask. So obviously you have been doing that with your clients, so now we find ourselves in a statewide mandate for wearing masks. The second item is hand hygiene, and that is that washing your hands with soap and water for 20 seconds or using an alcohol-based hand sanitizer is critically important, along with not touching your face, obviously. Frequently cleaning the high-touch surfaces with a disinfecting solution. And a couple other items: daily showering, wearing clean clothing, and we would ask you, where appropriate, to do self-monitoring of your temperature. Another item that we want to mention, we are fully aware of, is the time that you spend outside of work, your off work time. And we recognize that you guys are out doing life, you're starting to take vacations, you have family visitors, you have other visitors, you're trying to live your life. We serve a vulnerable population, so we just want to encourage you to follow the guidelines of the communities that we live in: mask wearing, social distancing. We encourage you to stay away from large groups of people, and just be mindful of your own personal safety. Moving on to another item, and that is symptoms. So we want to not encourage you, but to require you to call the office and do not go to work if you are experiencing any of the COVID symptoms. That would include fever, cough, shortness of breath, lack of taste or smell, or other lower GI symptoms, which I think you guys kind of all know what that's referring to. So we just want you to let us know if you're going to err on the fact of calling us, and be cautious about feeling the symptoms. Current CDC guidelines state that testing is expected when showing symptoms. So when you call the office, we're going to direct you to call your doctor or healthcare professional. We'll give you some information on free COVID testing sites, and you would proceed accordingly. Another item that we want to touch base on is, what if you feel that you have been exposed to COVID anywhere? So that really means, not just when you're at work. So before we say anything, what's the definition of exposure? And that's defined as 15 minutes or longer without protective equipment. So as you're working, you have protective equipment on. So your exposure is a lot less than the average person out and about in the community. So it doesn't mean my friend's friend met somebody that had tested positive. What should I do? Should I go get tested? We want you to look at what the real definition of exposure is, and then we can go from there. Again, precautions always around your clients, and we encourage you to call the office when you have any concerns. We've also had a few questions from caregivers. Have we had any positive tests of caregivers or clients? And the answer to that is yes, we have. We have had some caregivers test positive. We have had some clients test positive. We would like you to know that neither of those cases were related to the other, meaning a caregiver did not catch their COVID from a client, nor did a client be exposed and catch COVID from one of our caregivers. They were all independent and separate from each other. In the cases of the positives, we have obviously been working very diligently, specifically with the caregiver and any other appropriate parties that we need to be communicating with. So that kind of wraps up what we wanted to touch on today. So we encourage you to call the office with any questions. You know, I'm sure you felt we didn't maybe cover all the questions that you have, but we tried to cover what we wanted to communicate to you. So call the office specifically if you have questions. And lastly, let us know if you find this video mode of communicating helpful. I know you get texts from Jean, but sometimes they can get very long when you're trying to read them on your cell phone. So let us know, and with that, we'll just say it's been a great first video chat, and have a great day.